What's up, guys? This is Mike here from Ekim Knives, and I have you on my pretty new computer, not to look at this nice little beach ocean scene here or anything, but it's because it's been brought to my attention that Dustin Turpin has taken down his draft site videos, and that's where I learned how to use draft site and how to design a knife. So I'm going to do a tutorial of my own to kind of put it back out there, and for this tutorial we're going to go through some of just the basics. We're just going to scratch the surface, but it should be enough to give you a working template in order to help you in the knife shop. Instead of sketching it out old-fashioned way with pencil and paper, we're going to do it a little bit on the computer. So first off, if you haven't gotten the software yet, you have to go to draftsite.com. Draftsite.com. Of course, it's not typing. Why would it type? Alright, so draftsite.com. Alright, and you'll see it takes you to this 3ds.com, same thing. And what you want to do is you scroll down. Now, I already have the software, so I'm just going to show you where to get it. But you could even go right up here to this products and service list. Go to draft site, download draft site, and just select whichever one is right for your computer. So they got the Mac one and the Windows one, and follow their instructions, and it's free, right? You don't need professional, you just want the free one, right? So they of course they put the little asterisk next to it. Just get the free one, okay? So we can close this out. Once you get it, it'll look like this. You see this in the middle here? So I'll open this up. Mine's the 64-bit. I don't know if it really makes a difference. But this is what it's going to look like when you open it up. Now, this is just nonsense. You don't need this, so you can X that out. Your toolbar is probably going to be over here when you first open it. Just by preference, I put mine on the side. I don't know why. It's just habit. Well, we're not going to even really bother with this, but you can a little later. See, it's going to come up as a no-name file. We could save this later. But first thing I like to do to get started is on the bottom here, I like to select the grid. And what that'll do is, well, exactly what it sounds like. It puts up this little grid that'll give you kind of a reference. I don't know what the exact measurement is between each dot. I think I measured it. It's something like a ½ an inch or something. I don't know. But that might all be relative to the size of your part. Now, the big thing with draft site, if you've ever used something like Adobe Photoshop or GIMP or any one of those programs, you have to do everything in layers. Now, with a folding knife, the layers are kind of easy. So we can go into this here. You see it highlighted, Layer Manager. And the first thing we're going to do is create some layers. So you got this one right here is the default. So we're just going to leave that alone. We're going to add a new one. So click Add New. And for this one, we're going to make it the blade. So type in blade and then select a color. So the blade, will leave it white. That sounds pretty good. Okay. Because this is a locking folder and there are a few components, we're going to add a few more layers. So the next one we're going to add is the handle. All right, so we'll type in handle. And you can name these whatever you want. And you want to select a different color this time. So for this, let's go for a red. Doesn't really matter. But these are your main components, obviously, blade and handle. You could separate these into every single entity of the knife, but it's really unnecessary. Now, this particular knife I have in mind is going to have a backspacer. So we're going to put in backspacer. We'll make that a blue. Cyan looks pretty good. Add another one. We'll make this the pocket clip. Make that a green, and so on. We could always go back and add more layers later. We'll click OK. And now up here in this little drop-down menu, you see we have all our layers, and there's all these little lock icons next to them. We're going to work on one at a time. So get in the habit of locking out every other layer. So the first one we're going to do is the blade. This default layer, you can completely ignore that. Just leave it locked or unlocked. It doesn't matter. Excuse me. So we're going to leave the blade unlocked, and we're going to click on it to select it. I should say blade up there. Now we can go on our grid here, and we can start designing. So first thing I'm going to do is grab a line. You see you get this nice little cursor. One thing to note is that there's this E-snap feature on the bottom here. This we're going to be turning on and off a lot. You see how my cursor just went to smaller crosshairs and then larger crosshairs with a square in it. We're going to leave E-snap on for right now. So let's go back and we'll select our line, and we're just going to draw anything, right? So let's make a little drop point. So we'll start from the back here, and we're going to drag it across. Now that long line that you see is just giving you a reference, so that's telling you it's straight. See, once I go, see, that's straight and that's straight. So we're going to start off with a straight line. We'll go right about there, and for a drop point we'll take it, I don't know, something like this, or maybe we'll do a slight drop. And if you go off the grid, that's fine, we can move it later. So let's say that looks pretty good. Now to get out of this line, hit escape. Okay, so now we have hit escape. Now this is going to be a very, very basic shape at first, so we're going to just square this off for now. Right, so let's go, I don't know, about 3 dots or so, 3.5. That looks pretty good. Alright, looking awfully goofy, isn't it? So we're going to go over here, we're going to grab an arc. We're going to make the belly of the knife now. Now if you want this a flat section and then the belly, you could put in a flat line, or you could just make the whole thing belly, whatever you want to do. So you know what, let's do a little bit of both. The E-snap feature that we have on that I spoke about before will automatically take you to the endpoint of that line. As you can see, it'll highlight endpoint when you hover over it. So that's good, you want that. So we're going to click on it, our line will generate, and we could go straight across. See, we have that nice little guide there. And let's say we want to take the flat of the knife up to about here. Hit escape to get out of it. And now we're going to go over and we're going to grab the arc. I'm going to snap to the end. You want to drag it out the way your arc would be. So don't put it in here. You want to drag it out to here somewhere. Click about the midpoint, because you're going to need to select 3 points for an arc. So there's the first one where we grabbed. Here's number 2, just slightly out as we're forming the belly. And we're going to bring it back to the end point. You see, it's a little wonky. I mean, that's a screwy looking blade. So we can clean this up and change things. So first thing I'm going to do is highlight this line, and I'm going to delete it. So go over here, hit your little eraser, and it's gone. I'm going to recreate this by selecting the line, coming down. This blade is a little too fat for my liking, and we'll go maybe cut about a ½ inch off of it. Now all I have to do is bring this up. Now it's not going to E-snap it for me on the end, so I'm going to go off a little bit on purpose, and I'm just going to leave it hanging out there in outer space. Now remember to cancel, so if I highlight something and I don't want it highlighted anymore, hit escape. So now what I can do is I can select that line, grab the endpoint, slide it over to the endpoint of this, and it'll highlight, say endpoint, and click. See, now I could do the same with this. I could select the endpoint, take it up to here, and click. Now obviously this looks nothing like a blade, so we're going to have to clean this all up. We're going to bring that belly in. Alright, that looks pretty good right about there. Okay, it's a very basic, very basic looking blade. Of course, you can put all kinds of features if you want to make a recurve and all this other stuff, but this is just a very basic tutorial, so this is just going to give you the idea of it. Okay, so now we have a very generic looking blade. Let's put a bevel in it, maybe to make it look a little better. So we're going to select the line, and wherever you think the bevel is going to be. So as you see, I'm trying to put it over here, but it wants to highlight the end. So right now I'm going to have to turn off the E-snap. So I'm going to turn it off, and now it's still telling me that it wants to select the end, but it's okay, it'll let me select over here. You see? And then I'm going to go up, and this is why I like to do the grid. Give you kind of an idea of where I could put my line. Go there, and we'll go straight across. Now for this one I'm going to overshoot on purpose, because E-snap, this E-snap feature, is going to want to put it on an end or the middle. It's this random point along the line. E-snap doesn't really recognize that, so we're going to turn that off. But now that we're done with it, we can turn it back on. And what I want you to do is highlight this whole thing when you overshoot the line like that. Now over here we have the little scissors icon. See, it says trim towards the right hand of your screen. I'm going to click trim, and we're going to cut that piece out. Hit escape, and now it's starting to look like a knife. Nice little bevel in there, and a very generic shape. Obviously this has to be changed. Okay, so now that the blade is done, make sure you don't have anything highlighted. Right, so if it looks like this or any of these blue squares on your screen, hit escape and make it a habit of hitting escape before you change into a different layer. Because I'll show you really quick what happens. See how it's white, and now I just went to go make a pocket clip and now it's green? It's because I had this whole thing highlighted, so now the computer thinks that this is the pocket clip. We don't want that. So now I'm going to go back and highlight the blade. Whoa. Don't want that. Cancel. I'm going to highlight the blade. We'll turn it back to white where we want it. Hit escape. Alright, so nothing's highlighted. Now make this a habit. We're going to lock out the blade. And we're going to lock out that pocket clip. We're going to work on the handle. So we're going to unlock the handle. Click on it. And now let's start working on the handle. Now for this one, we're going to leave the E-snap on, and we're going to go right from the blade. So let's say the handle's going to look really goofy if I start it back here. Alright, so you don't want to do that. We're going to move it up a little bit. And let's say of course E-snap wants me to put it on the corner there. So we're not going to do that. We're going to have to turn off E-snap. And let's start the handle right about here. See? See, now even with this line still attached, I can go down to E-snap and turn it back on if you need that feature. So let's go about halfway down, something like that. We'll just make this a square handle, I guess. Just kind of like a double drop point or something. Go like that, do some of this. Right? And now we're going to throw in a curve. So I hit escape just there. We're going to select the arc, and remember you want 3 points. So one, we're not going to don't go way up here, because if you go way up here, your arc's going to be like that. You don't want that. And it doesn't matter how much you try and adjust it, it's going to get stuck in that middle point. So we go back over to the arc. We'll jump right on the end point, and let's do a subtle arc. So just come up a little bit, something like that. And we'll drag it along, and that looks pretty good right about there. Now remember, subtle lines, subtle arcs, and all this, the subtle curves, will make the knife look that much more appealing. Now here's where it gets a little tricky, guys, and this is going to take some finagling. You want to design your folding knife based around the tools you have available to you. So if you have a small wheel attachment and a 1-inch wheel, you know that this is going to have to be a 1 inch or larger, your finger choil. So we're going to design it just like we have that 1-inch wheel. So we're going to take a circle, drag it out. Now don't click it again. You want it to flow around like this. And on your keyboard, you're going to hit D for diameter. Hit enter. If you look down here on the bottom of your screen, it'll say specify radius. We don't want radius, we want diameter. So you hit D and enter, and now it says specify diameter. So now with your 1-inch wheel, let's say I want to make a 1.5-inch arc. So I'm going to input 1.5 and hit enter. So now we have a 1.5-inch circle. Now in order to move it to where we want it down here, we're just going to select it, grab it by the middle, and we're going to place it right about where we want it. So it looks like we should come up maybe a little more here. I'm thinking, yeah, let's go right about here. Now we don't want this way up here. That's going to look really goofy. We just want a subtle arc. So this is going to represent the wheel that you're going to be grinding it with. So right about there looks good. We want about 1/3 of that circle. So we're going to place it right there. You hit escape. And now we're going to overshoot this line on purpose. Because eSnap is going to want to put it down here, or it might let us put it here. If it lets us put it here, we'll just put it there. But you know what? We're going to overshoot it just so I could show you. So we want our subtle arc. So we have our subtle arc there. And I'm going to just let it snap right there. Okay. Obviously, this looks like total crap, but we have to trim it. So we're going to highlight all this blue. And we're going to go over to our scissor function again, the trim function. And we're going to cut out all this stuff we don't want. So we don't need this bottom of the circle. It's probably not going to... Oh, it did let me trim it. See, there we go. That's much better. You hit escape, it unselects everything, and now we can start working on the front. We might have to move this up just a little more and move the blade back a little bit. But we're just getting the general concept here, and we'll take it from there. So let's put a little front on this blade. So we're going to grab a line here, and we'll just give it a slight point or something, a pointy handle, kind of my typical handle. So we're going to jump right there on the end point. As you can see, eSnap is still activated. And you don't want to put some pointy thing out like this. That's ridiculous. Just a little subtle angles make a big difference. So let's point it right at the grind. That looks pretty good right there. And we'll bring it down to here. Okay. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that looks really goofy. There's no way this is going to work. But don't worry. It looks worse before it looks better. So how do we know if this blade is going to fit in this handle and if everything's going to work mechanically? That's the problem. So let's start off by doing a stop pin. The stop pin is, I always suggest, start at the stop pin. Whatever you plan to use to stop your blade, start your design there. Because the stop pin needs a little more wiggle room than you think. So for this design, I'm going to grab a circle. Again, I'm going to drag one out. Doesn't matter what size. Just drag it out. Don't click it. I plan on using a 1/8 inch stop pin. So I'm going to go to D for diameter again on the keyboard. Hit enter. And the decimal equivalent of 1/8 is 0.125. So input 0.125 and hit enter. Now I have this itty bitty little 1/8 circle. I'm going to highlight it. And I'm going to drag it to where I think I should put my stop pin. Now you could scroll with your mouse to zoom in. And you don't want to put it like this. Don't put it really, really close. You're not leaving yourself any room for error. So we're going to move it back, give us a little meat on the edges for strength and stability, and give us a little wiggle room, and let's call it right about there. Okay? We'll hit escape to unhighlight that. There we go. Now, based on the design of the blade and the design of your stop pin is where you're going to have to put your pivot. Now, the lock face is probably going to be back here somewhere. If you're going to run ball bearings, you need to leave room for those bearings underneath. Or if you're going to run washers, leave room for your washers as well. This was one error I made in one of my designs. I had to completely scrap the design because I did not leave enough room for the washers. So over here, let's see. I believe I'm going to use a 3/16 pivot. So a 3/16 pivot, so it's going to be 0.187. So let's do that. Let's grab a circle. We'll do D for diameter, hit enter. We'll input the measurement. 0.187 is 3/16 of an inch. Hit enter again. Highlight the circle, and we're going to drag it just to an estimate of where we are going to need it. We could always move everything around if we have to. Now, when you have the stop pin up top like this, don't try and center your pivot. Otherwise, you're not going to have enough room. You're going to have to bring the pivot a little low. So, a little low, we'll move it back just a little bit. That looks pretty good right there. Click it, and it'll drop it in place. So now what? Now we need to make sure everything's not highlighted. So hit escape. Again, make this a habit. And we're going to go into lock our handle. We're going to unlock our blade. And we're going to do the same thing for the blade. Now mind you, E-snap is on. Make sure E-snap is on for this step. Grab a circle. D for diameter, measurement 0.125 for a 1/8 stop pin. Hit enter, highlight it, grab the center, don't grab the edge, grab the center, and you're going to drag it over to the pivot and it'll say center point. You want to drop it right on center. Hit escape. Now it looks like this blade pivot point has completely taken over the handle one, but it's not. It's directly underneath it. You can't see it. But that's why we needed the software is aligning it for us. We're going to do the same thing for the pivot. So this way we know where to put our pivot and where to put our stop pin, where to drill the holes in the blade itself and where to drill the holes in the handle. So drag out another circle. Just drag it. D for diameter, 0.187. Enter. Remember, zoom in if you have to. We're going to grab it by the center. And we're just going to bring it over here, wait till it says center point, and drop it. Okay. Here's why we did that. Because now, and make sure everything is unlocked. Make sure everything is locked except for the blade, and your blade is highlighted. You're going to drag a box and highlight the entire blade. Right? You could highlight the whole thing if you want to. It doesn't matter. The only thing that's going to work, because we have the other layers locked, is the blade. Now on the right hand side of your screen, we're going to go over and we're going to select this icon right here, rotate. So click on that. Go to the center of your pivot. And now we can rotate the blade. See what I mean? So now we can flip it upside down and we can see that our handle is way too long. We don't need it this long. So we could actually leave it like this. So I'm just going to drop it at an estimated spot. Let's say right about there. I'm going to leave it upside down just like that. And now I'm going to hit escape, because that's the habit we're creating right now, to make sure that we're not selecting anything we don't want selected. Lock the blade. Unlock the handle, select the handle, and let's clean this up a little bit. So for this and this, we're going to highlight both of them. Whoop. And we're just going to grab this corner and drag it in. Okay, we're going to do the same thing over here. Drag all of this in. We don't need all this room. That's a little too much. We'll leave a little bit of space. Even this might be a little too much. You want a little bit of room for your backspacer, so that looks pretty good. Now, let's make the backspacer. Since we know that the blade is safely in there, and we could extend this just a little bit to make sure we got enough room, that the blade's not going to cut somebody, it's not going to grab your finger when you're trying to take the knife out. And of course, you could round all these corners using the arc feature if you want. Speaking of the arc, this arc looks a little too shallow, so we're going to take this in just a little bit. Now, if you're too close to all these lines, see how it's E-snap is trying to grab all these points. We don't want all these points. So we're going to turn off E-snap just for this step right here, because we're just moving on the arc up just a tiny bit. That looks good right there. We're going to hit escape, turn on your E-snap. Now let's make that backspacer. You want to fill up as much as you can in this blade with the backspacer. So you could come all the way down to here and wrap it all the way around, all the way up front if you want to. It depends on your design, however you want it. You can mirror these lines. So if I wanted to do something like this, I can mirror these lines and do something like that. You could do it a little more accurate than I'm doing it. Now, if you wanted to take it way up here, you could, but we're not going to do that. That looks pretty good right there. So we got the basic backspacer going. And of course, you can do this however you want, whatever suits your preferences. But for the most part, this really long, goofy looking backspacer will work, technically. I'm going to give it just a little bit more meat, but we're getting a little close to that belly, so we might have to, you know what, let's curve this goofy thing. So while it's highlighted, we're just going to delete it. We're going to grab an arc, highlight the end. Remember, we're going to do a subtle arc, so I'm going to get awfully close to the blade. Grab about the middle point there. You know what, maybe just a bit past it, because we're going to have to arc it pretty tight down the bottom. That's a little extreme. We don't want that much. And over here, maybe we could drag this out. It looks like I went a little too far. We could pull it down just a little bit. That's not bad. But you guys get the idea. I don't want to get too close to that blade. Well, let's turn off the E-snap. So let's turn that off. There we go. Now, you don't want to leave yourself a millimeter of room right here, or you're going to run into problems. You definitely don't want that. You want to leave yourself just a little bit of wiggle room, but don't leave a half-inch gap right here, or you're just wasting handle space. So as you can see, now our blade is nicely tucked in there. This corner might be a little sharp, so we could round that off a little later. All these little corners, we could just round them off. You could either leave it so you do it during the process of making it, you just know to round those off, or we could round it off as part of the design if you're having these water jet cut or something like that. Now, as you can see, I'm sticking out a little bit here, so we're going to want to trim that. So you highlight both lines, go to your scissors and hit trim. Select that little piece and it's gone. We'll hit escape. Now that's starting to look a whole lot better. Now while the blade is in this position, we're going to need to set it up so it knows to stop. So you know what, actually we'll save that for a little later. Let's bring the blade back up. So we're going to hit escape, make sure nothing's highlighted, go lock out your handle, unlock your blade, select the whole mess, make sure you get at least all of your blade, go to your rotate icon over here, make sure you have your E-snap on, grab your center point and spin it around. Now if you want, you could zoom in and make sure you have it perfect. Just watch your E-snap. Your E-snap's going to want to snap to a certain spot. That looks pretty good right there. Click it. And now we're back in business. Hit escape to get out of everything. Alright, so the handle, I mean, it's a goofy design. We could totally change this, but it's just I'm showing you the concept of it. Alright. We're going to have to figure out a lock bar and a lock mechanism. Obviously, that's a big part of this. Plus, this is supposed to be a flipper. So, why don't we add a flipper here? So, we're going to take this line, and we're going to drag it and drop it right about there, right past the grind. Now, you could even go back a little bit more, but let's create a flipper tab. By that, go back to the whole principle of think of what tools you have and what you can do to create this. So, for me, I have a small wheel attachment. I can probably do a 3/4 inch wheel and get a nice radius here on the flipper tab. So for that, I'm going to drag out a circle, hit D for diameter, and let's go for 0.75 for a 3/4 inch diameter wheel. Highlight it, grab the middle, and let's put it right about there. Looks good. Whoop, hit escape. Now, this is probably making no sense at all why I wanted to do this, but it will in a minute. Let's highlight all of this. Actually, you know what? Let's just leave that for now. Remember, this, imagine this as the grinder that you're grinding into the blade. So this has now become the part of the blade, this part of the arc. And this is going to go down into your flipper tab. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a line. I just selected a line up there. E-snap it from the corner of this circle, right where our grind stopped. And let's cut off this circle. Just go right down with the line. Let's say our flipper tab is going to end right here on the bottom. So put a line through it just like that. Now go back and highlight everything. And we're going to trim it again. So grab your scissors. And we don't need this part of the circle. And we don't need this part of the circle. We don't need this excess here. So we can get rid of that. And we don't need this line here either. But that's not going to go because we don't have anything to reference off of. So the trim feature isn't going to work on this. So instead, we're going to hit escape, highlight that line, and just hit delete. So now that line is gone. Now this might be a little extreme. I could have cut this off a little cleaner. So what we're going to do is we're just going to shorten this just a bit. See, eSnap wants me to put it way up here, but I don't want it up there. So we're going to have to un-eSnap it. Take off your eSnap. And let's go right about there. That's a little better. We don't want a 2-foot long flipper tab. That's going to look a little ridiculous. Okay. We're going to turn our eSnap back on. Now we want to radius the end of this. Right? So now we know we got our 1-inch wheel will easily make this radius here. Our 3/4 inch wheel will easily make this radius here. So now we need to make the back side of the flipper. Now, if you want to get fancy, you can match it up to the curve of the handle. That's completely up to you. Some guys don't bother. Some guys come straight down. They want to do something like this. That's fine too. So we could do another 3/4 inch circle, let's say. So we'll drag out another circle. D for diameter, 0.75 for your measurement for a 3/4 inch circle. Highlight it, and let's drag it. So the space in between these two circles, so you had one here and now you have one here, the space in between the two should make up your flipper tab. So we're going to drop it right there. Hit escape. Okay, what we want to do is round this here and use this to integrate into our flipper. And we can move this whole mess forward, which we're likely going to have to do. You know what? Let's go ahead and do that right now. So we're going to grab this and we're just going to drag it forward a little bit. Now that did change our arc just a tiny bit, but that's no big deal. If anything, you can go back and you could do the circle over again, or you could tighten it up over here. however you want to do it. So we're just going to tighten it up. We'll take off the E-snap. And we'll just bring it forward just a little bit. So that looks pretty good. Now we're going to do the same with this circle. We're going to move it forward, grab it by the center, move it up just a little bit. So now it kind of lines up with the handle a little nicer. We don't have to go all that high, but that looks pretty good right there. Okay, obviously we don't need any of this. We just wanted this little bit of the arc. So we're going to grab a line. And you could E-snap it or not. We'll leave E-snap off for this one. And we're just going to go straight down the center. Well, not really the center, but we're going to cut off all the stuff we don't need. So we really don't need any of this. Right? We can cut all that out. Hit escape. Highlight all of it. Go into your trim function again. And we're going to start cutting away at the part of the circle we don't need. So now we're left with these two little lines which will not trim, so we're going to have to select them. You can select them one at a time or both at a time, that's fine. And delete. Now this might look like a goofy flipper tab because the arc is going away from each other. We really don't want that. So we can create another circle. Let's just come, that looks about good right there. And just jam it in there. Alright, so let's jam it way in there like about like that. That looks pretty good. Don't worry, it'll make sense in a minute. Highlight the whole mess and start trimming. Okay, we obviously don't need this piece. We don't need this piece. Oh, well, let me trim that. Okay. Don't need that. Oh, it's not letting me trim any of that. Okay, let's try and highlight that again. Okay, we'll grab our scissors. And we don't need this one. Whoa. Okay, it took off a little more than we wanted to. So we're going to forget this circle. So hit escape. Now to get that circle back, let's say you made an error and you want to get something back, hit Control on your keyboard and Z, or Command for Mac users. And that is your undo edit function. It's Control Z. So this isn't working out the way I wanted it, so I'm going to highlight it and delete it. Guess we're going to stick with the old standby and make a small arc. Now for this we're going to overshoot a little bit because E-snap's not going to put it where I want it. So I'm going to go here, and I'm overshooting on purpose. We don't want some crazy curve, so we're going to go up about center like that. And we're going to curve it back in like that. Okay, the same principle as the circle, but the computer's going to let me do this one, I hope. Make sure nothing's highlighted by hitting escape. Highlight this section here. This is probably why it didn't work, because I had to highlight this whole section. We're going to go to trim, and let's cut off the little pieces we don't need. Trim, trim, trim. Oh, that's looking a little better. Look at that. We got a forward finger choil now. We have a flipper tab. Now let's work on the lock face and the lock up. So the zoom function on this is a is a little odd. So let's go up here. Now obviously this isn't going to work. This whole mess, this is just not happening. So let's cut all this out. So let's delete this square. We'll go in here and we'll shorten this line. We need it to wrap around here. So we're going to go up here and we're going to take the line back to the edge of the frame. So something like that. Okay. Now what we can do is we're going to have to move the stop pin back or something like that. Or better yet, we'll move the handle forward just a little bit, because you don't want this gap that we're going to create right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab a line, put on our E-snap, and right from the edge of the circle, they call it the quadrant point, we're going to go straight up like that. Hit escape and have that little 6 showing. Oh, sorry about the phone, guys. It's all the way across the room, so I can't reach it, so just ignore it, please. It'll stop soon. Okay. Now we want to take this and we'll drag it and we'll make it perpendicular. Just like that. And we're going to highlight this and we'll trim it. So I'm going to cut off this piece right here. Oh no, it's not going to let me trim. It won't let me trim because there's no reference point on this side. So that's okay. We could just take it and shorten it. So highlight it, grab the end, and bring it to the end point. Boom, just like that. See, now our blade will stop against that pin in the open position. That's great. That's what we want. So now what? Now we have to continue on with the design. So we're going to go from the bottom of the circle, the quadrant point, and we're going to go back out towards the lock face. You don't want to come straight out because you're not going to have enough room. The stop pin's going to lock up. It's going to hit early and it's going to drag. You don't want that. So give yourself a little room. So I like to go on a little bit of a down angle. Right? So you want to go past your pivot point. And let's say we'll go straight down from here. Let me zoom in so you guys can see it. Oh. There we go. So we'll go straight down. We'll overshoot on purpose. Okay. Now this is looking a little goofy. We might have to move a few things around. This pivot point doesn't have a whole lot of wiggle room. Now again, you want to make sure that you have enough room to fit your washers, your bearings, and all that stuff. Plus leave yourself a little room to grind your lock face. That's a big one too. Wow, this tutorial is getting pretty long. 43 minutes already. Sorry about that, guys. I'll try to move it along a little better. Okay, so now let's connect this to the flipper tab. So we're going to take this and we'll highlight all this. Oh, it's not going to let me do it. We'll highlight that. Let's see if we could trim it. No, it's not. I didn't think it was going to let us trim it. Just because the handle is locked. If the handle was unlocked, we could have trimmed it, but no big deal. So we're just going to shorten this a little bit. Grab the end and drag it up. Look at that. E-snap actually worked for me. Okay, now with this line, we want to bring it right along this arc. So we're going to grab the end and we're going to drag it up. Grab that end point. Come on. It's a little bit off, but we can pull that out just a little bit. Have it line up. And that looks pretty good. It's a tiny, tiny bit off, but that's easily addressed in the final design. And we could always fix that later. So now we have a rough estimate of where we're going to be, where our stop pin is, where our lockup's going to be. And you also want to make this accessible. So if you're going to clean this up with a grinder, remember, keep your tooling in mind. So maybe you want to round this edge so it doesn't look so weird and goofy. Maybe you want to bring this out just a little bit. So you know what? Let's do just that. Let's bring this out just a little bit. Let's give us a little more room. So I'm going to grab it, grab the middle, and just drag it out to here. Grab the end of this. Drag it to the end point, hit escape, grab the end of this one, drag it to the intersection, not the end point, because our end point's down here. To the intersection, hit escape, and now we could grab the end point of this one and match it up. End point. Okay, that's looking a little bit better, but I'm going to tell you right now, there is no way that when you go to close the blade, that this lock face is going to clear that stop pin. Never going to happen in a million years. As you can see, what's going to happen as soon as we rotate this blade, it's going to go rotate this lock face up, it's going to smack the stop pin, and then what? Nothing's going to work. So we definitely need to move the point of rotation forward, right? Or the stop pin way back, but that's not going to work either. So let's do this. We're going to grab our point of rotation, our pivot, and let's try moving it forward. If we have to change the angle of the handle, we'll have to change the handle around or whatever, then we'll have to do that. So let's put it down a little bit and forward. Right? And we're going to have to match it up to this one later and take a look and see if that works. Now, obviously, this is a little bit better, so we can grab this whole mess. Let's bring this one down here. So, you know what? Let's kind of bring it, I don't know. We'll bring it right about here. Now, it's gonna want to E-snap. So let's take off E-snap, and we'll cut it way back to here. Right? And now we can come. Let's extend it just a little bit. Looks like. Bear with me. Okay. We'll grab this one, drag it forward, we'll line it up to about where we want it. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Something like that. We'll bring it down, and we'll connect all this. Let's turn our E-snap back on. And it's not going to let me. If it doesn't let you highlight a certain section, like right now, here it's not picking up the intersection, just overshoot it on purpose. And then we can go back and trim it later. So for right now, we're just going to connect all this stuff. And we're going to draw in the lock bar. I'm thinking that the lock bar is going to have to go back just a little bit. We'll move the pivot back. Don't worry, we'll fix it up nice. I'm getting myself all confused here. So hit escape. We're going to go in, lock the blade, unlock the handle, select the handle. Let's draw in a lock bar. Maybe this will make it a little easier for you guys to understand, because I'm starting to get a little rambly. You know how I am. Okay, let's take off E-snap. Wow, somebody really wants to get a hold of me. Okay. We're going to snap a line right about there. As you can see, it's perfectly straight up and down. You definitely want that. We're going to bring it back, your typical lock bar. You don't want to go super long. Don't go way back here with your lock bar. It's going to be way too flexible. And don't make a 1-inch lock bar, because it's going to be really hard to operate. So you want to get right about there. Looks good. We'll click there, and we'll drag it down. And you could overshoot. That's no big deal. Now we're going to grab another line. This time we're going to E-snap it. I'm going to go out a little bit. Maybe about an inch. Not even, maybe about 5/8, a little more than a 1/2 inch. Overshoot. And we have our lock bar. This one looks just a little bit short, so we can extend that. And all we have to do for that is delete this line, and let's extend this. So I'm going to grab the end of this, and we'll drag it out a little bit. There's our 5/8 again. Hit escape. Grab another line. Grab the end. Drag it down. There we go. So now, of course, you could highlight all of this, and we can go in and trim all that excess out of there. So trim, trim, and trim. Okay, we have a lock bar. This is starting to look better. Now, whoa, getting screwy here. Now we could match up our lock face to our lock bar. Alright, so to do that, hit escape. Make sure you have nothing highlighted. And we're going to go in, lock the handle, unlock the blade, highlight the blade. Now we could take this and we can move it right on top of the lock bar, because that's where your lockup's going to be, obviously. So now we could work around all of this stuff. We can move our pivot around. This is where the way we should have did it to begin with. So I'll fill you in on a little hint here. You're not going to need all of this, so we're going to trim this way back. Right? What we do need is we're going to cut this down to here. Boom, like that. Cut this down to here. And we're going to take either a line, a curve, however you want to do it. Let's say you're going to take a curve because it's easier for you to grind, let's say. And you don't want to do a very subtle curve. Don't go crazy. And we'll connect it to the lock face. Oh, look at that. It's starting to look a little better already. Now, let's put our pivot back. Let's see if that works. Okay, so in order to do this, remember, we have everything is locked except for the blade. So you highlight your blade. You could highlight the whole thing if you want. Go over to the right bar, select rotate. Make sure your E-snap is on. And go to your center point. So here you want to pay close attention. Well, let's see if it'll... Let me put this off track and see. Oh, okay. It's still there. We obviously don't need this circle anymore. So we can go ahead and delete that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. One of these days I'm going to remember to reverse the zoom on this because it zooms totally backwards to me. Oh, it looks like we did need that circle. So hit Control Z. We forgot to trim it. That's what it is. So highlight that. And we'll go in and we'll trim it. Boop. That's all. We want the arc, not the circle. Oh, it looks like we have something more to trim. So let's highlight that. Whoop. Come on. Select your trim. And let's trim that little tail off there. Escape. Okay. Yes, you can leave it like that and don't worry, it'll be fine. So let's select the whole thing. Okay, go back into your rotate. Find your center point. Now you want to pay close attention to make sure that the blade comes nowhere near the stop pin. So your lock face right here, where my mouse is touching, my cursor there, keep an eye on that. Make sure it does not hit your stop pin at any point during the rotation. Looks like we are well clear of it. But here brings us the other problem. So let's go to our locked position, so our closed position. So let's leave it right about there. Uh-oh. What is stopping this blade from slamming into the backspacer? Absolutely nothing is the answer to that. There is nothing stopping this at all. So now what? We could push the blade back, we can move the stop pin back, but then we have to change everything. And this is where I'm trying to get at by design your knife and start with the stop pin. The stop pin is the answer to everything, it seems anyway. So we're going to address this in a little bit. I'm going to take a little break. I am going on an hour right now. So I'm going to take a little break and we're going to come back and we're going to address this stop pin issue and see what we can do. So I'm going to pause it right here. All right, guys, I'm back. And let's see if we can figure out something to do with this stop pin. Now we got our open position ready to go and that looks pretty good. So now we have to figure out this closed position. We don't want to touch this lock face. We definitely don't want to go anywhere in there. We could bring out the flipper tab. If we do touch the lock face, it's going to have to come out more. And we're going to get awfully close to this pin. So we might have to do a combination of everything. But remember, once you change something, you have to change everything. You can't just pull this out and expect your lock to lock up and everything to function. Now remember, we want it all hidden inside the handle, so keep that in mind as well. So we have two options here. We could move the pin back and have it stop against here. Right, so that's option one. But then we also have to fix this. Or we could move everything forward and adjust it that way. Now over here, we're kind of close. We're not leaving ourselves a whole lot of room for washers or bearings or anything like that. We're a little close to this edge. And if you want to measure, by the way, guys, all you have to do is go up into the toolbar on the top, go to dimension. Let's go for a linear dimension. We'll highlight a point, so let's say We'll take off E-snap. Grab a point on this line. And we'll grab a point here. I know that's not straight, but as you can see, our dimension this way is 0.134. So if you know you're going to be coming out to here where the green part of my cursor is, then you'll be all right. But you want to leave yourself a little bit of room. You know, don't bring your bearing all the way out to here or your washer or something like that, because you're just too close. So we're going to hit escape to get out of that. Okay. Oh, and that also goes for as if you want to get the dimensions of your whole design before we get into the fixing the stop pin. We'll highlight the linear and dimension. Let's go to E-snap. And let's say, let's get the handle length. Give us an idea. A 6.2 inch handle. This is going to be a really big knife. So we can adjust all this later. I'll show you how to do that a little later. But for right now, we're going to escape out of this. Okay, this is going to end up... this is probably going to be a 5-inch blade. But if you want to make it smaller, we can scale this down or scale it up, however you want to do it. Okay, so the easy solution seems to be to move the stop pin back. Right, so we can move this back and then just extend the tang just a little bit. And this way you won't have a pinch point right here. Your flipper is a little far back, so we could also move that forward. Now, ideally you want the flipper as far forward as possible. Some guys even go as far as doing what they call a front flipper, and they put it out here. When it's back here, you don't have a lot of room to kick that blade out. The leverage just isn't there. When it's a little behind the pivot, and this is kind of how my design is, you could do a little bit of both. So you could push button it, which means push it straight down and load it that way, or pull it straight back. You obviously cannot push button a flipper tab that's out front of the pivot. It's just not going to work. The mechanics aren't there. So let's do this. We're in the blade. Right, as you can see, so we got blade highlighted, everything else is locked, and we're going to pull this whole thing forward. This tab needs to be a little bit bigger anyway. So we're going to pull that forward. All right, make the tab a little bigger. We're going to close up the radius of this just a little bit. Okay. So now we got a slightly bigger flipper tab, right? And you could round this or add jimping or make this a little longer if you want. That's fine. I like the smaller flippers. I don't like the tab that comes, 3 feet out of the handle. That's a little ridiculous. So, okay. So let's go hit escape to unhighlight anything you may have highlighted. We're going to lock the blade. Unlock the handle, select the handle, and let's move this back. And you want it just so it contacts, right, on the flipper. Now, you could also cut out a notch here. Some guys like to put them in here and cut out a little notch or something like that. And we could do that as well. So this way, you don't have the exposed flipper when it's down here. You don't have a notch in it or some wear marks from a stop pin. So let's go and we'll put it just so it's touching. Right, so let's call it right about, I don't know, let's call it right about here. Okay, now the blade is going to stop in the closed position. Right, you see? So now when we rotate it up, let's see what we have. So we're going to go in here, hit escape, make sure nothing's highlighted, because if you have this, it's going to be a mistake. So you hit escape, you're going to lock out your handle, unlock your blade, select your blade, highlight the whole thing, and now let's rotate it. So you got your rotate feature on the right, select that center point, and let's spin that blade around. Now you could have it lock up wherever you want. So if you want a slight downward angle like this, or you want it locked up straight, let's say we want it locked up straight. So let's go right about there. That looks pretty good right there. And as you can see, here's our issue again. Now all we have to do is move this back. So we could select all of this. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do it one piece at a time. So let's go in here and we're going to delete these. Delete. Okay, we're going to delete this radius as well. Let's draw a circle. Remember, this is a 1/8 stop pin, so draw out a circle. D for diameter. Enter. 0.125 is the decimal equivalent of 1/8. Enter. Going to grab that center and put it right over the center point of the handle. So now we could take this and we could drag this back here, but I have an easier way. Let's just delete that and let's extend this line right about to here. Right, you want it just so it's in front of that circle. So right about there looks good. Okay, now let's hit escape, grab another line, go to the end point, and you want to go to the end point, or the quadrant point rather, of this circle. Now if this is a little off like mine is right here, you could select it, grab that corner and straighten it out. You might have to turn off the E-snap for that. It's not going to let me. It's a little too close, it looks like. Oh, no, there we go. That looks pretty straight right there. So we were close. Okay, so now we got the squared off face. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to create our line. So we're going to grab another arc. So grab the arc, put your E-snap back on. Go from the quadrant point of this circle, the bottom. Nice gentle arc because we want to clear this stop pin when it's closing. So go about halfway, nice gentle up, and we'll connect it to the lock face. Okay, hit escape. Looks like our mechanics are starting to come together. Of course, since we moved this, now we also have to move the handle. You can leave it like this, some guys do. I like to go the little extra step and clean that up, but that's not important right now. We could always fix that later. So now that we have the lockup correct in the open position, let's just make sure everything works in the closed position again. So we'll highlight the blade, go to our rotate, make sure E-snap is on, and grab that center point. Now watch the stop pin. Oh, of course I did this again. So let me just drop the blade right there. We'll highlight this and let's trim out that circle again. So trim. Oh, too much. Control Z to get it back. Hit escape. Let's highlight all of this. That's why it cut out our circle. We don't want that. Okay, go back to our trim and select that edge. There we go. Now we have a nice 1/8 radius that you can file out and adjust your stop pins and everything, so you don't have to go crazy. Okay, go back and highlight your blade. Go back to your rotate feature. Select your center point again, and let's spin this blade around and pay careful attention to that stop pin. Make sure nothing comes in contact with it throughout its entire rotation. Okay, we're looking pretty good. So we're going to stop on the edge of the flipper tab. And we're going to stop right here. Now, are we dragging right there? So let's look real close. And boom, it looks like we're going to lock up perfectly. So we're going to stop. We're not going to hit anything. Even when we're fully closed, we're not going to hit the lock face. So let me zoom out for you. It comes close to that lock face, as you can see. Watch the lock face of the blade, the bottom of it. It comes awfully close to that stop pin, but just misses it and stops against the pin itself. So that's our stop position, and our blade is nicely tucked in. We have plenty of clearance, it looks like, so the mechanics are working. Fantastic. So let's go ahead and we'll open that blade back up. Go to our rotate feature. Grab the center point and spin it around until it's locked up. Make sure you zoom in for this. Now you could type in, if you know the amount of the degrees of the rotation, you could type that in. See, it says specify rotation angle. So from the closed position, I know my folder is 170 degrees. So if I type in 170 and hit enter, as you can see, my blade, the one I actually made in real life, not on the computer, rotates a little bit less, a little bit more than this model does. This one doesn't rotate as much. So whatever that number is, it's probably about 155 or 160 or something like that, just for this example. Now there's a way to measure it, but that's we're getting a little complicated at that point, so I'm just going to leave that out. Okay. That looks pretty good right there. So we're going to drop the blade. And there we go. Okay. The detent. Here's the rule with detent balls. Do not let it fall off the blade at any point. So if you cut out a notch right here or something for your lockup, for your stop when in the closed position, you don't want the detent ball to fall in that little hole. So we're going to drag out a circle, right? This is going to be on the handle, so we're going to have to do it on the handle and on the blade. So we're going to do it on the handle first. So we're going to hit escape, going to lock out our blade, unlock our handle, select our handle. Now the the detent ball, you can either put it on the bottom, the middle, the top. It all depends on where it's going to stay on the blade the longest. Right, so let's just say we're going to put it on, let's say we have a bearing track here. So you know what, just for fun, let's draw out a washer or something like that. So we're going to go grab a circle and, oh geez, I don't know. Let's say our washer is, you know what, let's just grab it. I don't have the measurements of the washers on me right now, so let's just say that looks pretty good. That's the measurement of your washer. All right, so now it's not going to interfere with anything. But if this were a bearing or something like that, you don't want your detent ball to fall in the bearing hole. You don't want it to fall anywhere. So it looks like the ideal position for the detent is going to be down here somewhere on this particular knife. So for the detent, we're going to draw out a circle. And this is going to be a little oversized to give us some room. So I'm going to put in let's go 140. No, that's too big. Forget about 0.140. Let's go 0.080. Oh, I never hit diameter. See, this is what happens when you don't pay attention. So hit D for diameter, 0.080, enter. And this is, like I said, this is oversized, but this is going to give us a general idea. So we'll put it right down here. You want to just get it as close to the corner as possible while still leaving yourself a good amount of room. Okay? So now, let's hit escape, lock out your handle, unlock your blade, select your blade, and let's rotate it to the closed position. So we're going to grab our rotate, our center point, and let's spin it around until we lock up. Now make sure you get this right every time. So that looks about locked up right there. Okay, so now we're going to draw another circle. You don't want your detent hole showing. It doesn't really affect the functionality of the knife, but it kind of takes away from the aesthetic. So 0.080. Oh, I forgot to put diameter again. So D for diameter. 0.080, enter. And like I said, this is oversized. I forget what the real measurement is. And we're going to lay it right over this center point. Hit escape. And now you have the track, the detent track, on your knife. So now we want to watch this circle right here as we rotate the blade. Make sure it doesn't pop out of the handle. Make sure it doesn't fall off the blade itself. It doesn't fall off the knife. So we're going to select our blade, go back to rotate, go to center point, and let's watch the arc. As you can see, we're on the blade. Everything's fine. We're not falling off. So it doesn't fall off, but look, right here at the handle, it's popping out of the handle just for a second, which means you're going to see that little arc line on your blade, which that's no good. So we're going to have to extend this handle forward just a little bit. Okay, so let's lock it up, and we have to do some handle work anyway. Lock it up, hit escape, and now we're going to lock out our blade, unlock our handle, select your handle, and we wanted to move this forward just a little bit, so we're going to highlight both of these. Let's highlight all of this, and we're going to move this one out. You know what? Let's move this one in first. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Yeah, let's grab right there. We might have to completely adjust this. Yeah, that's not going to work. Okay, we'll come back to that. We need to Control Z. Okay, that's where we were. So we're going to, let's start with this one. We'll pull this out just a little bit, right? So we need about that much room to hide the detent ball. So we're going to highlight this little line now and connect it, the end point. And for this, let's just connect this arc separately. You know what? This whole thing, I'm not too happy with this. Let's make a whole new arc altogether. So for this one, since we changed that flipper, it's coming out a little goofy. Let's go up here. Oh, oh. Not a circle. I grabbed a circle by accident. So go over here, grab an arc, and we're going to go up. And let's make a nice gentle arc, something like that. You know what we didn't do is connect it to the, there we go, connect it up there. Let's see. Make another arc. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to make that circle, right? Remember, it was a 1-inch circle. So diameter, enter, 1, enter. So let's go back to the fundamentals before I try and get all crazy here. You know what? We're going to have to go just a little bit bigger. You know what? Actually, right there looks pretty good with our 1-inch circle. Let's bring it down just a little bit. Maybe right there. Okay. We're going to just connect the line from here to here and get rid of all the stuff we don't need. So hit escape to get rid of that line. Highlight all of this. Oh, the whole circle. There we go. Trim out the bottom. Trim out this. Now obviously that arc is quite extreme. So we're going to trim all this out. We're going to bring this down a bit. There we go. Make it a little less extreme. Bring this lock face down a little bit. Something like that. At least now the flipper is hidden. You guys can play with this. I don't want to dwell on this too much. This is already a very long video. But you can play with this a little bit and get these lines to all match up. And that's the way I prefer to do it. So it might be worth looking into it for you guys. This is still a little extreme. So maybe down there. Alright, so enough of that. Okay. So highlight this, and we'll give it a little trimmy and clean that up. Boom. Okay. So remember, we moved this out a little bit. This is a little pointy for my liking now, so we can move the handle forward just a bit. So highlight those two, drag it forward. Takes out some of the point. Now, as you can see, it's starting to really look like a knife. Now, for the backspacer and the screws and the pocket clip, That's really completely up to you as far as preference goes. And it's very, very easy. So I'll give you an idea. So we're going to draw a circle. The dimension for a 256 screw head is 0.161. So hit D for diameter, 0.161, enter. And now we're going to need a couple of these. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to hit copy. I'm going to grab it, drag it out, hit escape, and now I have two of them. Grab that center point, and we're going to put a screw right in the middle here. Now again, you want to extend this backspacer just a little bit, either out this way or in this way, to give you a little more clearance for these screws, because this is a little bit tight. You're not giving yourself a lot of room to play with. So we're going to center that up as best we can, and we're going to grab the other one, and we'll throw this one in the back here. That looks pretty good right there. Again, center that up. Now we can extend this or curve this out or bubble it out, however you want to do it. But this is starting to look pretty good already. If you want, you could add a lanyard hole right here, but as you can see, this is all to spec, all to size, well, except for this goofy thing. But now, here's where our detent track is going to go. It's going to go along here and wrap around here. So I'll show you a way where you can connect that. I believe it's a circle. So if I drag out a circle, and we take this and we attach it to the center point right there. We attach this to the center point right here. Oh, maybe not. It's been a while since I did this. I guess I'm rusty. Alright, so we don't need this circle anymore. But there is a way to do this. I forget what it was. Where you could kind of align it for the center points. And it'll show you the arc a little bit of your detent. Oh, maybe that's it right there. Yeah, there we go. So as you can see, the detent is... Remember, the detent ball is on the blade, so on the handle rather. So it's not like the ball is skating across, underneath the handle. It's the ball remains stationary and the blade slides across. So we might have to move this down just a little bit to clear that. You see our washer or our track here. Oh, sorry about the phone, guys. Hold on. Hey, let me call you back in a minute. Doing a video. Okay, bye-bye. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to have to move this down a little bit, but that's the importance of doing this circle. So, alright. It looks like we're not going to have to move it down too far. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to delete this circle. We don't need that anymore. We can move this down just a little bit. That looks pretty good right there. Okay, and now our arc should go something like this. Of course, now we're going to have to close up our blade and make a new one on the blade. Okay, so we're going to hit escape, lock out your handle, select your blade, highlight your blade, go to rotate, center point, and let's swing this around. Remember, we're doing our locked position based on the stop pin. So that looks about it right there. And now all we have to do is move this circle to the center point, hit escape, and now we can rotate it and see where our blade and our handle are lining up, where our detent is. So watch the detent ball. We're under the handle, Ooh, we just make it. You see, we never fall off the blade. This will make for a very smooth knife. So imagine it's open and you go to unlock it. You have to move the blade that much to get the detent ball. Watch right here. Right? So Your blade is locked up. You go to unlock it, and boom, your detent ball is already on the blade. So now you're riding on a bearing the whole way, and then you sink in right there. So again, rotate it, boom, right on, and your blade should move freely. You don't want to have to close the blade this much before your detent ball hops on the blade. That's way too much. It's going to make for a very clunky locking mechanism. So you want that ball on the blade as soon as possible. So right here, whoop, and we're good to go. Okay. So I just hit escape and it just snapped it to where it was the last time. Let's go this, and let's try that rotation. So we're going to hit the rotate, grab the center point, and let's just type in for fun 157, enter. No, still way too much. All right. I am way off. Okay, no big deal. Grab rotate, and we're gonna stop it manually this way. That looks pretty good right there. All right, the flipper is actually functional. So now this design will work all day, all night. Keep in mind that you also have to design right hand or left hand. This one in particular, if I take it, so let's say I want to make a copy of the blade. Right now we have just the blade highlighted. So I highlight the blade and I simply hit copy. All right, come on, show up. Copy. And you just grab it anywhere, and I could take it and I could put a copy of the blade right up there. And boom, there's your template. Simple as that. If I want to do the same thing for the handle, I hit escape, lock the blade, unlock the handle, select the handle, and I could just grab it anywhere after hitting copy. So I hit copy, grab it anywhere, and bring that down. Hit escape. Look at that. So now I have separated the two entities. If I want to designate whether this is a righty or a lefty, because this is a one-dimensional or two-dimensional thing, I like to mirror it. So I will also take this, and you want to grab the mirror, grab the end, and move your mouse a little bit, and one will pop up right alongside it. Click the mouse, and it'll say on the bottom, delete source entity, yes or no. You want to hit no, so just hit N, enter, and it'll pop up. Now this is a little off my page here, so I'm going to move it. For that, you just highlight it all, select move, and we'll grab it right there in the middle. You could separate these if you want to. Now, here's the thing. We don't need two lock sides. So what do? You go in one, select everything that makes it a lock side, and simply delete it. Okay, so now we have a lock side and a non-lock side. We got our backspacer. If you want to make your backspacer into the other layer like it was supposed to be originally, which we completely ignored, by the way, we could take this and let's make a copy of it. So we'll take this, we'll make a copy, we'll drag it up here, hit escape. Obviously this isn't right, so we have to trim that. Okay, so there's a copy of our backspacer. Now all you have to do is simply highlight that, and see I didn't get it all, so I'm going to go back in and highlight it from this way too. I just don't want to highlight anything else. Okay, so we got it all. Oh, I hit escape a little early. So if you want, you can go in and click everything manually, but it's unnecessary. So now that the backspacer alone is highlighted, I can go in here and I could unlock the backspacer and click backspacer. You see it turned it red, and now it's part of the backspacer layer. So I could flip this around and create it and treat it as its own entity, which is great. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to lock that out. so I can't change it right now. So right now we're still in handle. I'm going to select the handle. Okay, everything else is locked and we are in handle. Here's a helpful tip too when you're making this. The pocket clip, I guess we'll skip that for now. I might do a separate video on a pocket clip. They're very easy. It's like very similar to this, and because it's only a two-dimensional drawing, it's pretty easy. It's just, you know, make a oval and put 2 holes in it, and there's your pocket clip. It's easy, believe me. So anyway, here's a fun little tip. Center mark. Right, so you go into dimension and you select center mark. So when you're making your templates, when you print these out, it gives you this nice little crosshair so it tells you where to drill your holes. Now unfortunately you have to select it every time you want to put a center mark, so even on locked ones, like I'm doing it under the handle layer, so it really doesn't matter. It's going to print out black and white anyway. So I mean, I could lock this and I could put it under blade if I want to, you know, and designate it that way. Like I said, it doesn't matter. You just go into dimension and center mark, and let's see here, we'll mark this one. You see what I mean? And you can do that for all of your holes. So now let's get the dimensions. Speaking of dimensions, let's get the dimensions of this whole knife. So let's see how big this thing really is. So we're going to grab linear. We'll go from the tip to the handle. That's typically how you measure it. And we got a 4.5 inch blade. This is a big knife. Right? Let's see how big we are. I just hit escape to get out of that. Let's see how tall it is. 1.1. So it's not very tall, but it's really long. So there's a couple of ways you could do this. You could scale this back just a little bit. For me, I would just kind of drag this back a little bit, and you could do it that way. If you like these dimensions, you like this this ratio, this handle ratio, and the height to length ratio, you can do something as simple as, so for this, I'm going to unlock both the handle and the blade. Right? So just about everything's unlocked. And I'm going to, of course, I put the backspacer in the way. I'm going to highlight this whole thing. Actually, you know what? You don't even need to highlight it. Let's go to Modify. Whoop. We'll go to Scale. And we're going to jump on the edge of one of these. We're on eSnap, so we're going to jump on the edge of the blade. Oh, it's not going to work. Maybe, oh, you do have to have it highlighted. My mistake. So highlight everything. Just going through and highlighting and highlighting. Okay, I think I got just about everything. You want to space your stuff out a little better than I did, because when it gets close like that, it's kind of annoying to work on it. Alright, so we'll go to Modify, and we'll go to Scale. Now we can grab the endpoint, and we can make this as big or as small as we want to, while still keeping that same ratio. So if I make it like this, let's say like that. Now let's check the dimensions. So we'll go to linear from tip to handle, and now we got a 4.2 inch blade. Okay, but keep in mind I also changed this. So if I go to dimension and I go to diameter, see, it's no longer a 3/16 hole anymore. It's 0.187. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't really going to make a huge difference if you left yourself enough room to play with, but just know if you scale it, it's going to change the dimensions of your holes as well. So you're probably better off. So we're just going to go Control Z, Control Z. Of course, it's going to do all my zooming and stuff. And there we go. We're back to our normal size. I would suggest just going in and manually bringing this blade back. You know, maybe shortening this up here. The height is nice. I think it just could be a little shorter, and of course you would shorten up the handle too. It's really not all that much work. I think that just about covers it, guys. This was a long tutorial, almost 2 hours. An hour and 40 minutes looks like. So I'm obviously going to break this up into a couple of parts. I'm not going to make you sit all in one sitting through this unless you want to. We'll see. I'm trying to think of any other tricks, but I don't want to really bury you. And I just want to give you guys the basics to get you started. One thing, very important. Obviously, you want to save it, so you would go into File and Save As. So I'll save this as Group Project. Okay, so we got Group Project. We'll save it. And who knows, if we do more tutorials, we'll just come back to Group Project. So we'll save. Now, when you go to print it, if you want the exact dimensions as listed, so if I want this 4.4 inch blade or whatever it was, make sure you go down here and unclick this fit to paper size. And you want, see, it's going to give me a 1 to 1.85 ratio. You don't want that. You want 1 to 1. And then you hit OK and print. And I'm not going to print it out right now. I don't need it. But make sure you change this to a 1 to 1 ratio. So let's cancel that. And what I like to do is I will add a simple note on the bottom. So I'll go to a simple note. Where did my simple note go? Oh, specify start position. Uh-oh. I'm getting out of control again. Let's see, modify. Let's go to, not modify, draw. Text, note. And where is my note box? Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'll say, make sure, print at a 1 to 1 ratio. This way I have a nice friendly reminder to print it that way. Otherwise your template is going to be off and you're going to do it all wrong. So that's it for today, guys. I hope this wasn't too bad. Like I said, I'm a little rusty and I'm certainly not a professional, but hopefully that gives you a good idea to get started and what to look for when you're designing your locking folder. But that's it, guys. I'll come back with more tutorials, I'm sure. This is Mike here from Ekim Knives, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.